On October 6, 1973, Egyptian President Anwar Sadat ordered his army to invade Israel from the south. Simultaneously, Syrian President Hafez al-Assad invaded from the north. It was a sneak attack on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the holiest day on the Jewish calendar. No one expected war. Israelis were caught completely off guard. Prime Minister Golda Meir had ignored credible intelligence that the attack was coming. After Israel's miraculous success in 1967, she was so convinced that Israel was invulnerable that she did not take the intel seriously. And as casualties mounted rapidly, all seemed lost. In fact, historians tell us that Defense Minister Moshe Dayan actually urged Golda Meir to use the nuclear option. It was that bad. Golda said no, and it was only by the grace of God, the bravery of Israeli soldiers, a massive airlift of military equipment to Israel by the Nixon administration, and millions of praying Christians that Israel was saved. But it was a wake-up call. Israelis were not invincible. Next year, we'll mark 50 years since the Yom Kippur War, and I'm sure we'll be talking about all the lessons we've learned. Hollywood is even making a major motion picture about the whole thing with Helen Mirren playing Golda Meir. Tonight, I want to share with you what Paul Harvey called the rest of the story. By God's grace, I've had a front row seat and a backstage pass to view the tectonic changes underway in this region, particularly between Egypt and Israel. And I have to tell you, I am deeply encouraged by what I see God doing. I first met Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in 2017. That's a fun story and one that I'll share on a future program. But in that first meeting in Washington, the president invited me to come to Cairo and to bring with me the first delegation of evangelical leaders ever to meet with the top officials in Egypt. As chairman of the Joshua Fund, the ministry that my wife Lynn and I founded to bless Israel and her Arab neighbors in the name of Jesus, I readily agreed, and it proved an extraordinary trip, one that I detail in my book, Enemies and Allies. We were invited to have tea with the widow of Anwar Sadat in the very home where Sadat plotted his surprise military offensive, the very home where Sadat also planned his peace offensive 4 years later, when he shocked the world by flying right here to Israel, addressing our parliament, and extending his hand in peace. It's hard to convey just how emotional it was for me to meet Sadat's widow, Jihan, introduce her to my colleagues and to two of my sons, both of whom have served in the IDF. Mrs. Sadat shared candidly about the pride that she felt as her husband became the first Arab leader in history to make peace with Israel, and the fear and the crushing sorrow she felt on October 6th, 1981, the day that terrorists assassinated her husband right before her eyes. Yet she noted softly, the peace with Israel still held. And indeed it has. We also met on that trip with President el-Sisi. The meeting was supposed to last an hour. It went almost 3. The riveting conversation is in the book. But it's worth noting 3 things tonight. First, Sisi has built close working ties with 3 Israeli prime ministers, Benjamin Netanyahu, Naftali Bennett, and now Yair Lapid. He's working with Israel to fight terrorists in the Sinai. And bilateral trade between our 2 countries shot up 63% just last year. Second, Sisi so admires Sadat that he's actively helping other Arab leaders learn from Egypt how to make and maintain peace with Israel. And third, while Sisi is a devout Muslim, he is showing extraordinary respect to Egypt's 17 million Christians, 2 million of whom are Protestant evangelicals. Look, these Christians still face real challenges for following Jesus in a Muslim country, but they praise Sisi for crushing the Muslim Brotherhood's reign of terror by rebuilding every church destroyed during the Arab Spring and building the largest church in the history of the Middle East and giving it as a gift to Egyptian Christians on Christmas Eve in 2019. Look, the Yom Kippur War was the darkest hour between Israel and Egypt since Moses and the Pharaoh. It was the night that Israel was almost wiped out. But look what God has done since. Today, our nations have peace, and Arab nations are finally following Egypt's lead towards peace. And the Egyptian church is huge and growing. Why? Look, there are many factors, but chief among them, Christians like you are praying, and God is answering.